Evidence for evolution is extensive, but not as simple to demonstrate concretely. Unlike cell biology, where evidence can be gleaned and analyzed in real time by running tests and observing them under a microscope, evolution requires evidence from multiple sources over vast stretches of time. The other problem with explaining evidence of evolution is that we humans seem to have a difficult time comprehending how long a million or even a billion years is. So let me help you visualize just how long Earth and life on Earth has been around.
Contemplating millions and billions of years is difficult. At least to me, the numbers tend to run together, so to help you visualize how long Earth has been around and when important life events occurred throughout Earth's history, let's head to an empty parking lot. In this demonstration, I will use distance to measure the age of the Earth. 1 meter equals 100 million years, 1 centimeter equals a million years, and 1 millimeter equals 100,000 years. Let's take a step back and notice the distance each time span represents. Pretty big difference, right? Since the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, I measured out a 46-meter distance over a parking lot. Where I am standing represents the formation of Earth, and where the grass begins at the end represents modern day. I will use a pink line to represent any major life events that occurred on Earth. For the first 600 million years, life on Earth was absent. If I move from the start point and travel 6 meters, this represents 600 million years. At around 4 billion years ago, the first signs of life arose, which are now known as the prokaryotes. Prokaryotes were the only life forms for pretty much 2 billion years. If I go ahead 20 meters, this represents the time span by which prokaryotic life lived alone. And when I arrive at this marker, the first eukaryotic cells now exist. So for over half of Earth's history, eukaryotic life forms did not even exist. Fast forward to 525 million years ago, in a time called the Cambrian explosion, where much of the phyla of organisms we know today originated. To go from the first eukaryotic cells to the Cambrian explosion required a jump of over 15 meters, or 1.5 billion years. We all love dinosaurs, right? So when did they arrive? Dinosaurs first arose around 251 million years ago, and this will require a 1.75 meter movement forwards from the time of the Cambrian explosion. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth until about 66 million years ago, which represents a jump of 1.85 meters or 185 million years. This gap represents the time on Earth that the dinosaurs existed. Now, if I move from 0.62 meters forward, the first human-like primates came into existence, which is around 4 million years ago. If I move just 4 centimeters, this will represent modern day, like where the grass is. So that's right, out of the entire span of this distance, our kind of primate has only existed in this gap represented here. I hope this helps. Now let's get back to the evidence for evolution.
The earliest and most visible evidence for evolution is the fossil record. Fossils are remnants of ancient organisms ranging from bones, casings, impressions, tracks, and even ancient Fossils are useful because they show organisms that existed in the past and how they progressively look different from related species today. In the previous video, I showed you images of ancient whale fossils and emphasized the loss of hind limbs, but the retention of long skulls and bodies were kept. We have lots of fossil evidence for the evolution of horses as well. Horses belong into the mammal order called the odd-toed ungulates, which also include rhinos and tapirs. If you take a look at a typical four-legged vertebrate, you will notice there are 5 digits on their limbs. Horses have only 1, while rhinos and tapirs have 3. Horses are thought to first evolve in North America about 55 to 42 million years ago, and in the genus Eohippus. This species had 5 digits on each limb, and over a period of time, the gradual drying of the interior of North America converted forests and the prairies that we have today. Successive fossils of Eohippus show that both the teeth and limb anatomy changed to make this horse have a more grazing habitat that allowed it to quickly escape predators, giving them enough speed. If you compare Mesohippus from 40 to 30 million years ago to Hyperion from 23 to 2 million years ago, you will see that all digits but 1 become reduced and the animal gets taller. Modern horses in genus Equus have only 1 digit in each leg, and it's this one. This reduction in digits helped the animal run faster and larger body size helps the animal to defend itself from predators. None of this would be possible without evolution through natural selection, and the fossil remains of the past ancestors provide evidence of this change. Another line of evidence has to do with anatomy. Similarly, related species have similar forms and structure. This is due to common ancestry. And one of the best examples of this is the forearm bones in terrestrial vertebrate groups. While you could certainly argue that a frog, bird, bat, cat, whale, and human forearms are different in appearance, they still have the same types of bones and almost the same number of each type of bone. The difference is the bone length, shape, and potential fusion of bones based on functional use of that forearm for that given vertebrate. Terrestrial vertebrate forearms tend to follow a formula of one bone, two bones, group of bones, and 5 sets of bones. In other words, a humerus or upper arm bone, radius, and ulnus, or 2 lower arm bones, and a group of bones known as the carpals, and then finally 5 sets of bones called the metacarpals and phalanges, or in our case, our finger bones. In humans, our forearms are used for grabbing objects. In cats, extended forearms bones help them jump. Birds have fused phalanges due to feathers, and whales have longer phalanges and shorter arm bones to build fins. Bats are the weirdest of them all, as they have a short humerus, radius, and ulnus, but really long phalanges, which provide for reinforcement for wing membranes.
Another neat thing about anatomy is vestigial structures.
These are anatomical features that are reduced and often non-functioning in a species, but had a much larger role in the ancestral species. Remember that some modern whale species still have remnants of a pelvis. Well, we humans also have a few vestigial structures. In fact, you're sitting on one right now, the tailbone. Tailbones are reduced to a small nub in humans and great apes because we no longer have a lifestyle suited for living in trees. We also have non-functional auricular muscles in our ears. You see, most mammals can move their ears around to detect sound. Since primates are mostly out during the daytime, we have lost this ability. Well, most of us. I still have it, see? I guess that makes me less evolved. Another piece of evidence is looking at vertebrate embryos. And you will notice that all vertebrate have tails and gill slits in the beginning. But as the embryo differentiates, gill slits are lost on most terrestrial vertebrates. And in the case of humans and other great apes, the tail is reduced to a tiny tailbone. Another really cool line of evidence is biogeography, which is the distribution of species around the world. You probably are familiar with Pangaea, the supercontinent that existed over 200 million years ago. As Pangaea began to break apart, similarly related species on the fragmented continents evolved their separate ways, but those that were in more proximity during Pangaea had similar body plans and adaptations. An interesting case of biogeography lies in the continent of Australia, where there are no native placental mammals. Placental mammals are those that have a placenta, which is a vascular organ that feeds the developing embryo and fetus until live birth. Dingoes, which are basically dogs and are in fact placental mammals in Australia, but they were brought over by ancient aborigines, so they didn't actually evolve there. Australian mammals are either egg-laying or they raise their young in a pouch, such as marsupials. And this is because Australia has long been detached from the rest of the major continents where the placenta first arose in ancient mammals. So due to this isolation, that gene just never appeared in this group of mammals. This also explains a lot of the strange biodiversity we see in Australia and Papua New Guinea, as well as New Zealand. In fact, there is a Wallace line named after Alfred Russel Wallace, which separates Indonesia from the aforementioned countries and has remarkable mammal diversity between the two areas. Biogeography can also explain why many island species, as well as inland freshwater riverways, harbor many endemic species. And endemic species are those that are only found in specific geographic areas. Many of the animals and plants on Hawaii and the Galapagos Islands are found nowhere else in the world, as the gene pool of organisms is restricted to being on that island. However, the nearest mainland area will have closely related species to those in the nearby islands. And with the discovery of DNA, RNA, and protein synthesis comes some of the strongest evidence for evolution. The more similar DNA is between species, the more closely related they are to each other. By just observing the morphology of bonobos and chimpanzees, you can see that they are our closest living relatives. But when you run DNA samples, we actually share a little over 98% of our DNA with them as well. So defend that 2% at all costs, because that's what it means to be human. And if you remember, proteins are made of amino acids, and amino acids are built by ribosomes using instructions from mRNA. One study was done on cytochrome C protein, which is used in the production of ATP in the mitochondrion, and it shows that closely related species have similar amino acid sequences used to build cytochrome C protein, and distantly related species have more different amino acid sequences. Okay, so everything I've demonstrated so far has been observational evidence over eons of time. Can evolution be demonstrated in the short term? Yes. Peter and Rosemary Grant and their colleagues studied Darwin's finches in the 1970s in the Galapagos Islands. They essentially captured the birds, measured the thickness of their beaks, and then released them. If you recall, Darwin noticed that beak thickness and shape was an adaptation to their food source. Thicker beaks are good for crushing nuts, and thinner beaks are good for eating insects and fleshy fruits like berries. In 1976, the Grants measured an average beak thickness of 9.5 millimeters in the population studied. In 1977, a severe drought hit Daphne Major Island of the Galapagos where the study took place. The following year, the Grants went back and measured the beak thickness to be around 10.2 millimeters on average. Why is that? The drought caused a significant drop in fleshy fruits, but retained more nuts. Birds with thicker beaks were more likely to survive because they had the means to eat nuts, while thinner beaked birds died off. This caused a shift to thicker beaks within 2 years for the finch population. So here's some evidence for evolution. There's actually mountains of it. But now I want to kind of get into the mechanics of evolution. How does it work? And specifically, how does it affect organisms at the population level? So in our next video, we will delve into microevolution.